I'm KJ Howe, author of the Freedom Broker series and the executive director of the International Thriller Writers. And of course, our very special guest tonight is Kathy Reichs, and we're here to celebrate a very special occasion, celebrating the official launch of Kathy Reichs' The Bone Code, which is her 20th novel and the best-selling Temperance Brennan series. We're thrilled to have some wonderful bookseller partners tonight sharing this event, and we encourage you to order, of course, a copy of The Bone Code right away. Phenomenal book. And as well, you might want to pick up one of the books from the guest authors this evening. So a few of our partners tonight are Indigo Canada, the Poison Pen Bookstore, Anderson's Bookshop, Books and Books, the Hudson Library Historical Society, Rediscovered Books. So thank you to everybody for your contribution. So Kathy, thanks so much for joining us tonight. How does it feel to be celebrating the 20th book?
Oh, people keep saying that. It makes me feel so old. How can I possibly have written 20 books? It's pretty astonishing. When I started out, I never anticipated the series would go this long.
Well, it's phenomenal. And I think I really respect your innovation in bringing such unique, storylines. And we're going to be diving into those with your special guest tonight. But I also wanted to say that we're really honored that you're part of the International Thriller Writers, actually on a board position as director at large right now. And I wondered if you might share with our viewers one of your favorite Thriller Fest memories.
Oh my goodness. I love all of them. It's just so much fun. We're a community, we know each other, but we don't get to see each other very often. So it's just so much fun to get together at the cocktail party or whatever, the whole thing, and see everybody face to face annually. It's really hard to pick out a particular. Sure. I'll think of one as the evening goes on, and I'll come back to you with that.
I would love that. That'd be fantastic. So we have a sensational lineup of writers who are also friends of yours, who are going to, help celebrate this special event, pop the champagne and have some fun. So without further ado, let's bring out our first guest. Karen Slaughter is one of the world's most popular and acclaimed storytellers, published in 120 countries with more than 40 million copies sold across the globe. She's the author of 21 novels, the newest of which, False Witness, right behind her, is on sale next week. So there we go. So I am going to now hand over the reins of the interviewing to Karen, and I'll be back soon. Enjoy.
Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Karen.
I guess my first question is, why do you keep asking me to do these things? Because I'm going to talk about your new book, The Boner Code.
Yeah, no, it is not the Boner Code. It's the bone. Oh, you actually had a false. I see it.
Bones.
I get it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, Karen. Why do I keep asking you to do these things? I'm a glutton for punishment.
So I remember my experience with you at BoucherCon one year. You're the guest of honor, and you and Alifair Burke and Lisa Unger and I went to dinner at this wonderful restaurant, and then it was like time for dessert to be offered, and we were all going, "Oh, I don't know," and you said, "I don't want any dessert," and we were like, "What?" So then we couldn't have dessert because of you. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. You probably did thank me in retrospect.
No, I didn't. I did not. Because we literally booked it for their desserts. But whatever. We're not here to talk about this. We're here to talk about The Boner Code, which is an exceptional book. Number 20. This is my 21st.
Okay, you're ahead of me.
I started when I was 12, and you started when you were 70. So the math's a little. But so I read on Amazon that this is the most astonishing case yet. Is that true?
Every single one is the most astonishing case yet. Yes. But this one is very timely. It deals with all of us. I started it way before any of this, but it deals with infectious contagions and vaccine production and things that, aren't on people's minds today.
And medical waste.
I always wonder. Favorite. Yes.
I had a friend who gave birth in a kiddie pool in her backyard. So
It's very
to have a
friendly.
water birth. And all I could think about was, what did you do with that water?
Yeah, no,
Um,
there were a lot of other things she had to deal with after that too, not just the water.
Yeah, but still,
The
right?
baby, for one.
Well, you know how I feel about that.
I do.
So this is an Isle of Palms. Where's
Partly, yeah.
That's on the
Starts out
coast
in
of
Charlotte.
the Carolinas, is that correct?
Isle of Palms is a barrier island off Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes.
That's the one south of North Carolina, Karen.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy.
Florida, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it snakes down into Georgia. Thanks a lot. I'm
It
sure it
does.
had something to
allow
do with
you-
slavery.
We allow you a little bitty peek of the ocean down there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then you get medical waste containers just floating up with dead bodies. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
So body shows up, Temperance gets the call. I guess the biggest question is, what's the difference between a coroner and a medical examiner?
Well, that's a very good question. A medical examiner has to be a medical doctor, an MD, hopefully with additional expertise, training, certification in pathology, and hopefully beyond that in forensic pathology. A coroner can be anything. A coroner is elected. I believe you have coroners in parts of
Yes.
Georgia.
We've got hairdressers, motorboat repairmen.
Funeral
Funeral
home operators, yep.
Well, at least with funeral home operators, they have a basic understanding of anatomy. But these are the people who get to say this is a murder or this is not a murder.
Yeah,
right?
they don't get to do autopsies. They bring in a pathologist to do the
Right.
autopsies, but they're the ones that sign the death certificate. And
Right.
some coroners are very good. The one in the book is actually an RN, and I've worked with coroners in Charleston who are RNs rather than medical doctors.
Are there larger cities in Carolina that have MEs, or like Atlanta has an ME, DeKalb has an ME, Blue Ridge has a coroner, right? So
North Carolina is mixed like that.
Mhm.
But South Carolina, I think it's a coroner system throughout.
So the coroner calls Tempe like, this is so gross. We opened this medical container. Please come look at these boners.
I don't think she put it in those terms, but basically that's paraphrasing the conversation that took
Mhm.
place.
And
So
Tempe's
Tempe
like,
goes-
dog, you need some what up. And she's like, what up? And the Tempe's like, up dog.
Very
Yeah.
funny. What?
Yeah.
Mhm. You try that every time we do an interview.
Yeah. I just filled in your parts this time because you never fall for it. So she gets the call. She's like, on the horn. She's like, a body, bones, what? I'll be there. And then what happens?
Yeah, she's a little reluctant. She's actually headed down there to help her friend following this hurricane. But she goes, and of course, things go awry immediately. She looks at these cases, these bodies, and she sees disturbing similarities to cases she worked on 15 years earlier in Montreal.
And that's why it's astonishing.
That's a long distance. That's, what is it, 1,200 miles? No, it's more than that.
Nautical
I should know.
miles?
I fly that all the time back and forth.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you should know that. I thought you were a doctor. So why would people, I've read this book, obviously. Why would other people want to read this book, Kathy? Other than they like Temperance Brennan, they like your writing for some reason, they like you. What are some other things?
It's got all kinds of good stuff in there about human genome, ways that the human genome has been mapped. There are ways to modify it. Vaccine production is in there. Contagious diseases that you could catch from Fluffy or Fido, your favorite pets.
Watch
So
it, lady.
There's lots of scary, yes, you could get it from cats. One of the few things on earth you like are
Yes,
cats.
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I do like a cat.
Yeah.
So vaccine production, did you go into any vaccine producing areas or
I did
laboratories?
not. I don't think you can actually visit them because of sterile requirements for cleanliness and sterile. But
Oh,
I
that
did-
one in New Jersey where they ruined all those batches. I bet you could have gone there.
yeah, I might have been able to buy some of those batches, test them
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
But I did research and I talked to people who are in that field.
Okay. So
And they-
epidemiologists,
Mhm.
mRNA.
Yep.
So how crazy is it that like mRNA has been around for such a long time? There's this crazy academic who was studying it in New Jersey. Was she Turkish or Hungarian? And everybody was saying, "Oh, you're crazy. No one cares about mRNA." And now, all this time later, it's basically saving the world.
Yes, yes. And which which Nobel Prize was it? Given to two women
Yes.
in medicine and physiology, I guess. For
Yes.
work
And the
on-
gal who did CRISPR.
Yeah, that's where they went.
Ladies in STEM tearing it up, saving the world.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I had to go back because this book was written before all of this COVID and all that. So I went back and inserted references to it and inserted references to the two Nobel Prize winners.
You know, one thing I did not know, I talked to some US Marshals a few months ago, that the Marshals were in charge of guarding the convoys delivering the vaccines.
I didn't know that. I thought they just went out and arrested people.
Well, they do that too. Hunt down pedophiles, people who escape from prison. They do a lot of seizures for the government. In Charleston, I talked to one of them who actually had to confiscate an oil tanker that had just pulled in because
That's
the
a big confiscation. How do you confiscate an oil tank? You mean a ship?
Yeah, he just went there with the paperwork and said, "Captain, you know, your employer hasn't paid their taxes, and so we're taking this." And the captain was like, "Okay, here's the wheel." And the marshal was like, "Hold on now, but, you know,
Bring it home first. Yeah.
So they do all kinds of cool things.
Okay. I have not yet tapped that. I have not yet used U.S. Marshals. I don't think. I can't remember a lot of my earlier books.
Yeah, me either. I mean, your books.
Yeah.
So what are you reading lately that you love? I've got a book you're gonna really enjoy, but you go ahead.
I'm reading a book called Hamnet.
Yeah.
And it's really good. It's about, apparently William Shakespeare's 11-year-old son died of plague back in whenever it was, the 1500s, I guess. And this is a fictional account based on that of Shakespeare and his family and the other kids and the plague. So it's very interesting.
I'm not on the boat with that. I just couldn't get into it. I wanted to love it, but I mean, I'm all about the bard, but I just couldn't get into it.
Oh,
I'm reading Unwell Women, which is it's nonfiction, just about how shitty medicine has been to women from Hippocrates on.
Okay.
One of the really fascinating things was the Greeks thought the womb moved around inside of a woman's body. So if she was too mouthy, they would give her something bitter to eat so that the womb would go back down. And of course, it explains periods perfectly. So it's really, really fascinating, though, just about how women have been screwed from the very beginning. Basically, we're just vessels for men.
I also read a book called A Woman of No Importance.
Yeah, that's
a good one, about a woman who was a spy, a very central spy for the U.S. in World War II in France. And that's a good one.
I feel like we're finding a lot of history that we weren't really taught, you know, especially growing up in the South. It's like, what? I mean, it's really incredible seeing all these women's contributions. Another one I really liked was about Lady Bird Johnson.
Okay.
And I didn't realize after Kennedy was assassinated, LBJ didn't have, for the remainder of that term, he didn't have a vice president. So Lady Bird just kind of was the de facto vice president. And she was a partner with him. I mean, she ran the business that they started, but she was really instrumental in forming like the Great Society policies, of course, which were overshadowed understandably by the Vietnam War. But it was like, wow. You know, I thought she was just a lady who put wildflowers on the side of the highway.
And took down the billboards.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which we thank her for. Oh, and the Ethel Rosenberg one, pretty good. Spoiler alert, it was bad.
Okay. I think most people might suspect that going into that. Book.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know. I'm just saying.
True. Well, one of the things I dealt with in my previous book was conspiracy theories and all these nut job theories out there about, you know, the world being taken over by half human, half reptiles, or Elvis is alive in a hotel in Las Vegas, or that.
People are crazy. I mean, everybody knows the microchips are in Viagra.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. Science.
I thought they were implanted in your brain when you went in to get your hair done or something.
Yeah. Well, that seems really possible.
So you don't have to worry about it though. You haven't had
Not
to-
much of a brain. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Nobody's getting in here.
Yeah, there you go.
So you two have such great chemistry that I figure the reality TV producers right now are calling yourself. So,
No, probably not ringing here, but
Oh, oh,
so Karen, really appreciate you celebrating Kathy's big moment with her. But we'd love to, before we let you go, hear about, yes, the Boner Code, a must read. If you could tell us a little bit about False Witness, which is coming out next week.
well, I'm very excited. It actually is written in the pandemic. So people are experiencing the pandemic. It's not about the pandemic. I mean, there's like murder and sex and violence and all that stuff. So don't worry about it. But, people are wearing masks and socially distancing and other people aren't. And, I guess Kathy got a week ahead of me on this. However, I wrote about pathogens as well and conspiracy theories. So it was really me who did it first. But I would encourage people to pre-order False Witness, but you can also use this as a warm-up, the Boner Code. It's very good. It's excellent. Actually, it's one of my favorites, which I hate to say in Kathy's hearing, but I really enjoyed it. And I hope everybody else is enjoying it and will enjoy mine as well. And it'll be a really enjoyable time.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight, Karen. Congratulations to your release and looking forward to reading that one as well.
All right, great. We'll see you. Bye,
Look
Kathy.
forward to it.
Karen, see ya.
I love it when you two are together. It's always so much fun.
You should
So,
see us when we're actually together.
I can only imagine with drinks too. And anyway, so the next author we're going to feature often goes on the Today Show and recommends books. Any guesses, people? Well, that's right. It's Harlan Coben. And he has over 75 million books worldwide. And he is the #1 New York Times bestseller of 31 novels. His books are published in 45 languages across the globe. Harlan is also the creator and executive producer of several Netflix television dramas and was the showrunner and executive producer for 2 French TV miniseries. Is there anything he doesn't do? So Harlan has won the Edgar Award, the Seamus Award, and the Anthony Award, as well as a wide array of honors. His most recent book, Win, is available now. So it's another one you can pick up. You're going to have a lot of great reading recommendations before the end of this evening. So now I would love it if, and I just want to take a second to give a big shout out to Jeff Ayers, who is behind the scenes tonight and is our producer and basically coordinating everything. So thank you to Jeff. And Jeff, if you could please fire up the video with Kathy and Harlan.
Hi, I'm Harlan Coben, and I'm thrilled to be here with my friend Kathy Wright, the author of The Bone Code. And we are sort of having a little celebration here because it is the 20th novel. Wow, 20th novel featuring Temperance Bennett.
That's
Kathy, did you ever dream that we'd be doing 20 of these?
When I wrote the first one, I just was praying that somebody would publish it. That's it. That was my highest aspiration. And then maybe somebody would read it and like it. And that was it.
So you started with modest expectations. Is that how you?
I certainly did.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of going, don't you? Like you don't think about like book 20 right away. Just hope book 1, you just get published, and then maybe people will read it, and then maybe you can get 2, and then maybe 3, and then maybe you can make a living at it. Kind of like that. Yeah,
kind of like TV. Oh, maybe they'll pick up our pilot and maybe we'll get season 2. It's always maybe, if. But I did have these crazy parameters for myself. There was so much money. I would not take anything less. Me, never having been fiction. And I said I would send it to 50 publishers. And if I got 50 rejects, I would take that as a comment on my writing skills and go back to my day job.
So how many did you end up sending it to, or how many before it started to go? Pretty fast. It was fast.
It was the first one.
Right. It was.
I didn't get any rejects left.
And here we are now with the Bone Code number 20. It's a congratulations, first of all.
Oh, thank you so much.
It started as a fun thing to look back and think that how many years has temperance been in your life? I mean, and
I can tell you exactly. I started spring break of 1994.
Wow.
And then it took me 2 years to write Deja Dead because I was just, doing casework and teaching full time. So I'd sneak it in early in the morning before going to the university or on vacations or in summer. And my kids would tiptoe around, rolling their eyes, saying, "Mom's working on her novel."
That's it's a big part of it. Proving them wrong is a big part of it.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore,
People don't really understand that we use anything to get our juices flowing, including hatred and anger and trying to prove people wrong, right?
There you go. There you go.
So the bone code, let's talk a little bit about the bone code. I know there've been a lot of other people discussing it, and I never like to give details. But it's a theme that you do a lot, since you're dealing with bones, past crimes, cold cases. What about that? What about that fascinates us and fascinates you, obviously?
Because my main character is an anthropologist, mostly she deals with people, as did I, who weren't dead for were dead a while. They weren't immediately dead, unless they'd been dismembered or boned or not boned. What am I trying to say? Burned or decapitated or something like that. So it was just natural for me to bring that into my stories.
Well, also, it's kind of interesting because you have bones, which are normally buried. And I always think of the past as being buried, but it kind of digging its way out after all these years. That's kind of what you've always done, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is. And in this one, it's there's a hurricane, and this medical waste container washes ashore because of the hurricane, and their body's inside. So, of course,
the past never fully leaves us, does it?
Yeah.
Great,
No.
Great. So also, I mean, when were you writing this during COVID? You're writing this part of this during COVID? And how much of it
I started this, but interestingly, because it involves vaccination production.
Right.
It involves not epidemic or pandemic, but an infectious disease flare up. So I started this probably 2 years before COVID.
Wow.
COVID wasn't even on anyone's mind when I started this book.
And yet there's definitely a pre and post pandemic feel.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
How did COVID affect you and your work?
I had a kind of a nice time. I was with a pod, my two daughters and their two kids each. So me, my two daughters, 4 grandkids were trapped in our beach house. So we spent 4 months there. I got desks for the kids, and they did all their remote schooling from there, and I worked from there. She worked from there. So, we were pretty happy for a while. About 4 months.
How was your work? Was it affected though? Were you able to do as much? Maybe a little bit less? Maybe a little bit. How were you in terms of your production? Let's say, were you able to keep going?
Yeah, I was, because I have my office at the beach house, or I have my office where I am now in Charlotte. And it took discipline with kids running around. I would get up in the morning and just work until like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was when they were on their school remote Zooms that they were doing. So it really didn't impact my productivity, I don't think, but maybe the quality might, who knows, but
I think I would describe you, and I think a lot of writers are of this, especially both of your jobs. You're kind of a socially adept introvert. Would that be a fair thing to say? I mean, here we are, we're talking. We seem like, probably to most people who are watching, like we're kind of normal.
Yeah.
But eventually we have to then go in our rooms and lock the door. Is that not?
Exactly. And when I'm at social events, if I don't know people, I just look around for someone I know, and then I just glom onto them. So if I ever do that to you, if I just quietly slip up and take your arm, that's what's going on. I'm not good at just introducing myself. And give me a mic and I'm okay. But give me a crowded room, not so much.
Yeah, I'm terrible with that as well. So 20th, how many do you think? I don't know. So I'm sorry. Do you plan on continuing? Let me ask you that. Do you think there'll be 5 more. Let's go with 5 more. Do we think there'll
No,
be 5
let's
more?
go with 2 more.
2 more, okay.
Because I just signed a contract.
That's
Well, it's supposed to be arriving today, actually, for 2 more.
Congratulations.
So I'm well along in book 21, which tentatively working title is Cold, Cold Bones. So yeah, that hopefully that'll be out next summer. Then 1 more after that for sure. And then we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
So let's go back to the beginning of the Bone Code. What was I always like to ask this question. I don't like to ask, where did you get the idea? Though I don't mind that question as much as some others. But what was the seed? What was the first thought that eventually was the seed that grew into the, if you will, the tree that is Bone Code?
Okay. One thing that really interests me, Harlan, is technologies that evolve faster than legislation to control them. So I was reading the paper. I do still get hard copy papers.
What's a paper?
And there was a story about a Chinese doctor who modified the genome of 2 unborn babies. So I started thinking, we now know the mapping of the whole human genome. We now have the tools with CRISPR to modify the genome, but most of the scientific community has agreed we're not going to do that just to make designer babies. And yet this guy went ahead and did it. So I started thinking, well, you do the what if thing. Well, what if this? What if someone used that technology for less than honorable purposes? And that was my sort of beginning premise.
I love that. I mean, one of the interesting things to me about, as the science of your business gets better and better, it means it gives you a whole lifetime more of ideas in a sense. I mean, we can discover how much more can we discover now through bones now than 10 years ago, than 20 years ago, than 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And what will it be in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years?
Well, I won't be around, but
What's that?
I won't be around for that.
Won't be bones.
And I don't want to just use bones all the time.
Right.
So I'm lucky I have my colleagues in forensic, toxicology or forensic, whatever, engineering or forensic linguistics or whatever. So I like to bring all of that. And I'm lucky I can just pick up the phone and say, hey, tell me about, I don't know, mitochondrial DNA in cat hair or whatever I happen to need to know.
What? Because when I'm not a great researcher. I tend to be a lazy researcher, but my research is usually calling someone on the phone who knows a lot more about it than I do, rather than reading books. And it sounds like here you are a scientist.
I do the same thing. Yeah.
That's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I feel much better about myself. Thank you. I know this is your celebration, but I'm coming away feeling much better about myself.
Right.
And I see that we are fairly close to out of time, according to my thing. So I'm going to say that I'm hoping that we can do this for the 25th Temperance book, at least the 22nd. But that's like a number they won't have the big celebration. So you got to get to 25, Kathy.
Hopefully for the 22nd, we'll be getting together again. I'll see you at Thriller Fest, or I'll see you, some festival or.
Inshallah. I really hope
we've seen a lot of each other on Zooms.
Yes, it's the best. We've probably done 4 or 5 of these Zooms together.
Yes, I know.
It'd be nice to have a drink in a New York bar together.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks very much for talking to me, and again, congratulations.
Thank you,
Harlan. 20th book, and everybody go out there and read Bone Code. Thanks.
Okay, good to cyber see you.
Well, that was just fantastic. You and Harlan are great together, and I'm really hoping he's right, and you're going to go for 5 more and make it a special silver anniversary. So curious, I love the fact that you have access to all these, forensic experts in the various subject matter. Can you tell us just a little bit more about someone who does forensic linguistics and what it is they study?
Oh my goodness. Forensic linguists study language and the totality of language, but within a legal, if there's a legal issue involved. Did I tell you the funny story about me finding a forensic linguist? It's one of the experts we didn't have anywhere that I worked, at the lab or anywhere. So I just Googled forensic linguistics, and this one name kept coming up, and Rob Leonard at Hofstra University in New York. And I thought, okay, what the heck? I'll send him an email and, maybe he'll respond. And so he got the email. He probably did what I had done and Googled, who is Kathy Reichs? Anyway, he replied and I asked him if he could help me. I was writing some French English poetry for Bones to Ashes. And he said, sure. And we were well along working on this when I mentioned this to another friend and they said, do you mean the Rob Leonard? That was his name, Rob Leonard. I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Turned out Rob Leonard is one of the founding members of Sha Na Na. He was a student at Columbia University and he and, a group of them got together. So I went out on the internet and I found a clip of Sha Na Na playing at Woodstock. And I sent it to him and I said, Rob, is that you in the leather pants? And I heard back immediately. He said, those were gold lame. And I loved those pants. So that was kind of a fun new friend that I made.
That's fabulous. I love it. And the gold lame.
And someone stole those pants from him.
They're probably worth a fair amount if they were in
at the time, maybe.
Mm. So I'm based in Toronto, Canada, and I know you, spend a lot of and have spent many years in Montreal. Our next guest is also Canadian because we're having a lot of Canadian influence tonight here. And why don't we bring on Louise Penny, who is a best-selling, award-winning Canadian author whose novels have been published in 23 languages. She has 2 upcoming books, The Madness of Crowds, which will be released in August, and A State of Terror, which she co-wrote with Hillary Rodham Clinton, very impressive co-writer, which is releasing in the fall. Louise recently joined, Kathy to talk about the art of co-writing for books and TV and writing from personal experiences and the unique atmosphere that Quebec, Canada leads to mysterious settings. And I can't wait to learn more about this, given, of course, my, I love Canada and my country. So let's dive in to the next video.
Oh, Kathy, this is so exciting and congratulations on the Bone Code. It is. I was lucky enough to be sent, as you know, at your instigation, an advance copy, and I whipped through it so quickly. I think you questioned whether or not I'd even read the thing.
Well, we'll see.
Brilliant. It is a wonderful read. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. There will be a pop quiz on it. So.
Oh, good. And I'm going to nail it, I'll tell you.
Okay.
But I also want to start off by saying also congratulations on this being your 20th.
It is. I can't believe it. It's 20. I can't be old enough to write 20.
No, exactly. You're just a child.
I know.
20 of the Tempe books, but you've written others as well in between, which is also kind of shocking. But
yeah.
you don't mind, I'd like to go back just for a moment to Deja Dead, which was really groundbreaking. And certainly for me as a writer, one of the things that you pioneered was really quality crime fiction literature set. Deja Dead, from what I remember, was mostly set in Montreal. There was, some of the other, but it was, I would say 80% set in Montreal. Is that correct?
It was pretty much entirely set in Montreal. It was certainly entirely set in Quebec.
Yes. So how did you, I know you were working there at the time, but were you at all tempted to not do that? Because it would have been a safer thing to do to set it in Charleston or set it anywhere else.
Louise, I was so naive. I didn't know that. I just thought, I love Montreal. I love this setting. This setting will be close enough that an American audience will accept it, and yet French enough that it will be a bit exotic. So I just thought, and no one was using it. So I thought, that's it. It never occurred to me that there was this mindset in some publishing houses that Canadian settings will not succeed.
Did you get any pushback at all on that?
I didn't. Yeah. In fact, on the second book, when I was starting, my first contract was for 2 books. Mm-hmm. And when I was about to start second one, I said, do you want me to move her, down to the States? And they said, absolutely not. Just keep her right where she is. So that one is like half in the South and half in Quebec. And now the third one is entirely in Quebec. So.
Yes. No, and you really burst that open for the rest of us. You made it so much easier for the rest of us to be able to set novels there. Well, with the first one being such a huge hit, internationally. Did that put pressure on you?
Yes. Yeah. Can she do it again? Is she a one-hit wonder, or will she be able to produce another equally engaging book? I felt a lot of pressure. The pressure on the first book is, well, will anyone want to publish this? You know, I'm a totally unknown author, a debut author. No one's ever heard of me. Will it get, that was the pressure there. And then with the second book, can she do it again? Can I produce another one of these?
And did you feel that pressure yourself, though? Did you wonder whether you could? Or...
I certainly did. I don't know what was in the minds of others, but I suspect they thought the same thing. Can she do it again? You know?
And of course you did. And now 20 later. And what's astonishing is that you go from strength to strength, which is, you know, so exciting as another author to see. The other thing you've done, because you haven't just sort of sat down and glided on temp, you've really branched out and pushed yourself. And one of the things I'd love to explore is your decision to write with your son.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
That came about, he's a lawyer, hated practicing law, did so for maybe 2 years, and came to me and said, with this proposal, let's write a young adult series. So at first I thought, no, I don't know how to do that. But then, yeah, why not? So we did.
The Virals. That's the Virals series, right?
The Viral series, which features Temperance Brennan's 14-year-old great niece, Tori Brennan, and her 3 best friends who are boys. Excuse me. So we did it. We did 6 books and it worked.
It's just, you make it sound, and then we did it. It's like, come on.
And, you know, we still speak and all of that. And then he dumped me and he went on and signed contracts on his own. So.
And he's no longer in the will. So we can just set that aside.
There you go.
But how did you figure out how to write together?
Well, he was better at some things. He's younger than I am, obviously. He's my son. So he was better at the dialogue, at knowing social concerns among teenagers and kids. I was better at the cop stuff and at the forensic stuff, because we use that. The Virals books are equally as complicated, the stories, as the Temperance Brennan books. They're big honking books. But what's different is, you know, they are kids. They're 14, 15-year-old kids. So they have different social concerns. They talk in a different way from crusty old homicide detectives. So I was better at those things. He was better at the kid end of it, I suppose. And by the time we finished the series, he was really largely doing the writing and I was just editing, destroying his art.
Yes, I can imagine the Sunday night dinners.
Yes.
I wouldn't even know how to begin to appeal. Can you explain the difference between writing for a young adult who would be 14, 15, what?
Yeah, our book skewed a little, in retrospect, ours skewed more towards middle grade, like the 8 to 12, 13, 14-year-old, the Viral series. He then went on and wrote young adult, which skews more, you know, 15, 16, 17, 18. Right. So, and each of those is a little different from the other. Obviously.
What a challenge. You were talking about the science and you making sure, and that was something you felt very strongly about clearly with the television series too, was that you were the watchdog.
Yeah, that was largely my role. I read every script, all 246 of them, and gave notes, as they say in Hollywood, gave input largely on the science. We pushed the envelope, we stretched it a bit, but in the writer's room, we would say it has to be plausible. And when I would give notes, if I would come across something that was just outrageous, I'd say, this won't work. And they generally took my input and usually would modify it.
I'm not sure if you remember, but you and I met for the first time at a garden party I think it was 2005, just before my first book came out, actually. And you were describing for me the series. And at the time, it just seemed absolutely brilliant, this idea that this fictional television character would be, in her spare time, a crime writer, writing about Kathy Reichs.
Yes.
Who came up with that idea?
Hart Hansen, who was our showrunner and a Canadian, that was his idea, to do that flip around. That Temperance Brennan on television was a forensic specialist by day, and in her spare time, she wrote forensic novels with a main character named Kathy Reichs. So we had fun with that in a number of episodes throughout the 12 seasons.
And one of the things that's happened, I mean, we say this is the 20th book, but of course it's been going, you wrote Deja Dead. I was trying to remember, is it 96, 97 it came out?
It came out in 97. Yeah.
97.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, and things have changed a lot. Science has changed, technology has changed
Yes.
a great deal. Is it a challenge to keep up with it?
It is, but I still, I don't do very much casework, but I still attend professional meetings and I still read our journals. And I have a regular weekly meeting with 5 other women forensic anthropologists. So we're always bouncing ideas off of each other, and I listen to stories about their cases. And so I'm never at a shortage, either for story ideas or keeping up with technology especially in areas of forensic science that are not mine.
Yes. Well, that's easy. I find it a challenge, and I'm not doing a lot of forensics at all in my books, but even things like cell phones and what smartphones will now do and what we can discover. And the danger is, like in the first paragraph, they'll know exactly who did it, where they were.
I know cell phones are problematical. So.
Yeah, so how do you deal with that?
Well, my heroine loses hers a lot, or it's taken from her. So,
Down the toilet every now and then.
yeah, every now or over the cliff or whatever. So, it's true though. You have to get around. Why isn't she hearing from Ryan? Or why? Yeah.
Why don't they know where the bad guys were all the time? Because we can now, follow
Ping
them.
it off the towers, right?
Yes, exactly. No, it's very upsetting.
Yeah.
In this book, you talk about genetics a lot and CRISPR and things like that. Is that something you knew about beforehand, or did you have to research? Or it's terrifying.
I mean, enough to be dangerous. I knew that the whole genome, human genome, had been mapped.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that we had this technology to modify that genome. So right away, that's an idea right there. Whoa. If someone does this and they're doing something they shouldn't be. But I had to do a lot of research. I read this big giant manuscript on the ethics of human genome editing. So I did a lot of research then. I started with the idea and expanded out into research on vaccine production and what's a contagious disease. And when I wrote the book, it was way before COVID, even though I have this flare up of this flesh-eating contagion in Charleston. I haven't heard from them how they feel about that, but I had to go back and research all this stuff. And then I released the book right into the teeth of COVID. So.
Wow. Would you consider in any of your books discussing this pandemic?
I did go back late in the editing process. My editor and I thought about it and decided I should go back and make it clear that this is taking place in a post-COVID world.
Right.
So I give very brief mention of it in this book. And I think every author is going to have to deal with that question. How do you, do you recognize it or just ignore it and go on?
I have the same issue with the book that's coming out, and exactly that struggle, that sense that people aren't going to want to read about it, but we can't ignore it at the same time. So how do we deal with it?
Yeah.
Because so much of, well, I actually want to ask you about this with Tempe and Kathy, and whether the two have grown closer together or further apart, or how has that happened over the course of the life of this series?
Well, I think she parallels me so much professionally, not personally necessarily, that, we've evolved together. We've evolved with the science, and there hasn't been a lot of change there. What changes are the different cases that she works on. And that's true. Every time I'd go into the lab, it would be something. Every time you thought this is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, I'd go into the lab and there'd be something even stranger. So she and I certainly have, we've grown with our science professionally, but personally, I think she's always been her own person. She's a recovering alcoholic, which I'm certainly not. We've been at a cocktail party together, so you know that. I definitely take a drink now and then. We share a sense of humor, I think, but perhaps that's evolved a bit over the course of the series. But her social relationships have been all over the place, up and down, and yeah.
confusing that people think they know you better than they actually do because of this?
Well, people will come to an event and say, you know, I really didn't like it when you did X, Y, and Z. And I have to say, no, I didn't do that. That was Tempe, not me.
You're not working as, you know, as full-time as you were at the beginning of, you know, in 97 or so. Is that going to be a bit problematic, keeping up and finding all these sort of bizarre and strange cases that
No, because not at all, not at all. I read the literature, I attend our meetings, I meet with colleagues regularly. And I'm always on the lookout for things that are just stories that are just out there. That's actually what kicked off the idea for the Bone Code. So
Good. So we can look forward to another 20?
I signed a contract recently for 2 more, so we can at least look forward to 22. Total.
22.
Then we'll see. Then we'll see.
Well, I'm just so happy to be able to be with you today and to celebrate with you. It is, you know, personally a great achievement on your part, but professionally you have helped so many people and more people than you probably know, and I'm one of them. So it's a great honor for me to be able to thank you and to celebrate.
Well, thank you. It's so good to see you. It's been a long time, and to see your ostriches. Love your ostriches.
Growing out of my head.
Names for all of them.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Louise. Bye-bye. Have a great summer.
Yes, you too.
I'm just as intrigued as you are, Kathy, about her ostriches. When I was a kid, I lived in Africa for 3 years, and I was once chased by an ostrich. So
That was
that
probably an emu, though, wasn't it, in Africa?
no, it was actually an ostrich. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. We also have ostrich egg that we got there too. But yeah, it was a crazy moment because they can be pretty aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got my ostrich provenience mixed up.
No worries. Yeah, I think I'm right. I'll look it up to make sure though, because I trust you over me anytime. So next up, we have a doctor in the house. We're fortunate to have the incredible Tess Gerritsen. Now, Tess is a former physician, filmmaker, and an award-winning international bestselling author whose books have sold more than 40 million copies in 40 countries. Very impressive. The TV series Rizzoli and Isles, starring Angie Harmon, is based on her novels. And her latest book, Choose Me, published earlier this month. Tess and Kathy are going to discuss how their other careers, like as a physician and a forensic anthropologist respectively, inform their fiction writing and how their dual careers have supplemented each other for decades. And I'm eager to dive into this next little session and see what you and Tess get up to.
Hi, it is so much fun to see you again, Kathy, and congratulations on, I believe this is the 20th.
It is. I
Yeah.
can't believe it. It's 20. Yeah.
Oh, well,
I started when I was 4, you know, so.
I just finished reading The Bone Code. It's fabulous. Because I'm also somebody from the medical field, I love how you always bring in real science.
Oh, good. And try to keep it simple, you know, try to keep it jargon free, but so people learn a little something, but have fun along the way.
Yeah. Well, since we both had our books turned into television shows, I wanted to focus this conversation on bones and the experience of what it is. I mean, what is it like to have your books turned into a TV show? How did that happen? And did you have any idea it was going to be so successful?
Well, you hope, as you know. I mean, your TV show was a long-running 6 seasons. It was a long time, right? Yeah. So you go from, at least my experience was, you go from, first of all, will they make the pilot? And then they picked us up, they made the pilot, and then will we actually get on air? And then yay, we're doing a season 1. And then every year it's year by year by year. In our case, I think we had 1 2-year pickup, but really every year it's like, you know, is this it, or will we go another season? And that went on for 12 seasons. So we were fairly pleased with ourselves.
Yeah. So you had well, I guess it's true. When they start with the pilot, you have no idea how long it's going to run or how successful it's going to be.
Or if it'll even get picked up.
Right.
You know, most pilots never make it to air. They just sit on a shelf somewhere. So.
When they cast it, what did you think about the way they cast it and how close they were in your own mind to your characters?
Um, there were differences, obviously. I was doing an interview once with, oh, it's a long story, with Australia, I think, and they said way back in the beginning, and they said, if you were to do a movie, who would you want them to cast for Andrew Ryan? And I said, Rex Harrison. And there was this pause on the line, and we went on with the interview. And then after we hung up, I realized, oh, you moron, you meant Harrison Ford, not Harrison. So, for one thing, Rex Harrison was dead at that point, so he wouldn't have done very well with his lines. But that's how I picture, when I created Andrew Ryan, I pictured him. So David Boreanaz is different, but he was just fine. As far as I'm concerned. And the characters in the TV show are different from the characters in the books. Even Temperance Brennan is younger, and she's less polished. She's kind of awkward, less sophisticated. I think if you watched all 12 seasons back to back, what Emily did with the character was brilliant. How she evolved the character and had the character grow. And partly it's the writers, but partly it was also Emily playing the character. So I couldn't have been happier with our choices.
So did the television show affect how you wrote your later books? I mean, did you change any of your Tempe character in the books to be more in line with Emily's character?
You know, I really didn't. And that's why I liked having it different, that I had book Tempe and TV Tempe. And I think that's true of your characters, Rizzoli and Niles also. Yeah, I mean, here, she's beautiful. She's my neighbor, by the way, Angie.
Yes, I know.
Yes. I see her out running. And anyway, so she's a bit different from the way you wrote the character, but that's freeing. It allows you, when you sit down to write another book in the series, you're free to do with your book Tempe, and whatever TV Tempe is doing, that's just a completely different line of Temperance Brennan.
Do you get any feedback from readers that say, this is nothing like the television show, what's wrong with you? I mean, some readers have odd ways of approaching things.
In the beginning, we would say, wait a minute, she's in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Montreal. What's she doing in Washington, D.C.? Why is she at the Jeffersonian? Or, why is she younger than the Tempe in the books? But as the series evolved and people watched it, they were good with it. They just figured, well, okay, this is more of Tempe. It's different, but it's more of, a different manifestation of the character. And also, what I would say is, think of it as a prequel. Yeah, she's younger. She's more awkward socially. She's in Washington, D.C. Think of that as a prequel to the Tempe in the books.
Yeah. Now, you've written some of the show, some of the episodes. What is it? And I've done some screenwriting as well. Let's talk about the difference between writing novels and writing for television or movie. What do you think is the experiential difference?
Yeah, the experiential difference is that for our show, and I think this is probably true of every TV series, you begin it as a collective experience. You break the story in the writer's room, and you and the other staff writers go in, and some of the producers go in, and you just throw out ideas and you brainstorm ideas, and you have a big empty board. For our show, it was divided into 6 acts. And by the end of 1 to 2 weeks, usually, you have your storyline hammered out. And that's different from just being the lone writer at your keyboard in your office. And I really enjoyed that collective experience. What I didn't enjoy as much is you then have to pitch it. You have to pitch your initial story outline, and then you're sent to write a very detailed outline. When that's pitched and accepted, then you're finally sent to write the script. And then that's it, you're done. And they can change whatever in your script, which I'm not used to in my books. Is that your experience as well?
Yes. Well, I've always written original stuff, so I didn't have to do a writer's room. It was like what was coming out of my head went into the screenplay. I'm wondering about the experience of the writers in the writer's room. Here you are, the creator of these characters. Were they intimidated by you, or how was that to be with these people?
I think it was mutual intimidation. I was intimidated by them. I mean, how do you come up with these brilliant stories and week after week? And then they were a bit intimidated by me. How do you write a whole novel that's, 90,000 words? One of the differences also is that when you're writing a screenplay, it's all dialogue. Maybe some action, but you don't need to put any description in there because your viewer sees it. So that process, the structure is similar. You'll have your A story, your main story, your B story, your C story. But when I got the first script, I was amazed. It was like, I don't know, 60 pages for whatever we were, for 42 minutes. Is that what an episode is? Because you can take all that, describing the room or the setting, or that was a difference.
It's very freeing, isn't it? Just to focus on the story and the dialogue.
Yeah, it is.
Is there any episode that stands out as being one of your favorites?
Oh, well, one of the ones I wrote, of course. My daughter and I wrote The Dude in the Dam together. And we really had fun with that. And that's a good example of things being changed. We had our opening scene, and for our show, our opening scene was always somebody discovering, a mangled, messed up set of remains. Our opening scene was someone bouncing along in an ATV, going airborne, crashing into a puddle of slime and discovering a body. A puddle of slime because leopard slugs, they're slugs, they put out slime. And if water is added to it, it can increase in volume by 99%. So we thought every time we read something like that, we go, oh, perfect. Yes, let's use it. Anyway, that got changed to two kids walking through the woods and they spot a body in a beaver dam. Why did that get changed? As the writer there may be one of our actors that's not available there, but it's cheaper. You don't have to crash the ATV. You don't have to have a stunt driver. You don't have to have the medics there, because you're doing a stunt, that kind of thing. So what we didn't know is that there were only 3 working beavers in Los Angeles and they were all booked. So it came down to we're shooting the scene where they've dug this trench and they're going to cue the water and the water is going to race down through the beaver dam. And we didn't have a beaver. So at the last minute, we finally got our beaver. But yeah, that's one of my favorites. It's also the one where Hodgins let the botfly grow in his neck.
Oh, yeah.
Which is totally disgusting. We loved it.
Botflies are disgusting. So now that we're talking about botflies and something that we both are familiar with, let's talk about the previous life that you had and what led you to write this series of some would say grotesquely fascinating books. You were a forensic anthropologist. I was a medical doctor. When did you know that this was going to be fabulous fodder for a series?
Oh, always. I don't know. Somewhere along the way, it became obvious that people were beginning to note forensic science somewhere in the 90s. And nobody had yet touched on my particular area of forensic science. And it is pretty disgusting, as you said. So it just seemed like that would be a good area for a book. When I finally decided to get serious about that and write one is when I made full professor at the university and I was free to do whatever I wanted. So that's when I started the first book. How about you?
Well, I was a writer before I became a doctor. So it was just something that I needed to do. After I got my MD, I thought, I'm going back to my first love. And so I sort of did it backwards. But I'm just wondering because a lot of what you're dealing with are probably things that you learned in your business and, in your profession. Were there any cases that you had as a forensic anthropologist that you have not been able to use yet in the books or in one of the television series? We didn't draw on my cases that much for the TV series. We drew on many things, but in the books, I have used cases. I practiced for more years than I'm going to admit to. So there are many cases I've yet to draw on. It's not that I haven't used them on purpose. It's just that I haven't gotten to using them maybe, or they just weren't fitting in with the theme. I usually come up with a theme for the book first,
and then think, okay, how can I drive this story with the forensics?
So do you have any ideas for another type of series that, I know you're doing a young adult series as well. Anything else that might be making its way to television?
I don't think so. We did do, my son and I did the Virals series. We did 6 books in that. And we think that would make a great series, either animated or, live action or whatever. Nobody agrees with us yet. So we do have 6 books in that series, if anyone's interested. But yeah, I just signed a contract for 2 more Temperance Brennan books. So I'm deeply engaged in the first of those, and there'll be another one. I don't know. We'll see what comes up after that.
Oh, great. Well, it's so nice to talk to you. And here's to celebrating 20 years of Temperance Brennan. And may there be 20 more years. Oh, that sounds...
Yeah, there will not be 20 years from this girl.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tess. Bye-bye.
So Kathy, it does seem like all of your friends are expecting many more than 2 books coming up.
Well, we'll see about that.
So I do have to ask you, I find it hilarious that, you see Angie Harmon running, and she's of course starring in Tess' show. Did you ever stop her and say, I know Tess?
We have talked about that. Yeah. I also am friends with Bruce McGill, who played the detective in her show. So she and I have also talked about that. It's funny that I got to know 2 different people through totally different pathways that were associated with that show.
Yeah.
And
small
Tess,
world,
the big
isn't it?
3.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I actually love her as an actress. So it's kind of nice that you have a chance to see her. So Jeff, if our producer could please bring in our final guest tonight, that'd be wonderful. Perfect. Welcome, David. How are you tonight? Welcome, David.
Hello, how are you?
Wonderful. There you go. There you go.
There you go.
Perfect. So our final guest tonight is David Baldacci, one of the most celebrated authors today. David has been writing since childhood, when his mother gave him a lined notebook where he could write down his stories. David published his first novel, Absolute Power, in 1996, I apologize. In total, David has published 40 novels for adults, which have been published in over 45 languages and in more than 80 countries. So David has been published also novels for younger readers, and his most recent book, A Gambling Man, is available now. So welcome, David.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here. Hey, Kathy.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Your library set up behind you.
I think David might have the nicest bookcases in the world.
I think so, yeah. And a ladder.
Yeah. So I'm going to step aside and allow David to interview Kathy now, and I'll be back in a little while.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank
Hey, how have you been doing?
I'm good. Your first book came out in 98. Mine came out in 97. And yet she said you've published 40 books since then.
Yeah, it's been a roll.
And I'm only at 20. I got to get working.
No, you've been doing a great job. At some point, what do the numbers actually matter? There's just a lot of books, right? So it's, I think the last time we saw each other was at Million Island Book Festival in
Yes.
2020 before all COVID hell broke loose.
Yes. And you all had a wonderful dinner at your house, and I had to fly home for some reason. Was I on book tour or something?
I think that's right. Yeah, you were really busy, but we really appreciate you coming down. Everybody was thrilled to have you, and you were terrific. So it was great. I appreciate it very much. I remember we did an event years ago with Sandra Brown, and we took questions from the audience, and people would ask you questions, and you would say, "Well, are you talking about Tempe TV or Tempe book?" And I love that. Have you compartmentalize that in your head. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, well, they are different. They're slightly different in ages, and they're different in where they're practicing forensic anthropology, and they've got different backstories. They're united by a common premise. They're smart, and they're tough, and they're committed to, they have a passion about their work and are committed to justice for the dead and also for those that are left behind.
No, I mean, your stuff, I do a lot of research in my books too, but your forensic material, obviously you're in that field and you're an expert in that, but being an expert, you could make the mistake of trying to put too much in and making it more like a textbook and not a novel. And you never do that. It's just enough to make the reader feel like they know what's going on. They have enough information to follow the story. It's fascinating stuff. But I know that it's a tricky balance, and hats off to you because you do it really, really well.
Well, as you know, you're a lawyer, and yet, I have two kids who are lawyers who are also writers. I don't know where they went wrong. They went to law school and then they figured it out, right?
I know. I went to law school because I needed to eat. I needed a roof over my head, and right at that point, my writing was not providing any money for me, so I had to do something else. But I didn't regret it. I mean, as a lawyer, all you have are words. That's the only weapons you had, either spoken or written. So it was pretty good training to being a fiction writer. And I made up a lot of stuff when I was a lawyer too, so that's not bad.
Well, there you go. A lot of theater, right?
So 20 books with Tempe, congratulations for that. That is a phenomenal milestone with one character. So what's next for her?
Oh, well, I'm working on 22. We have a tentative title, Cold, Cold Bones. Yeah, and she's going to be revisiting some of her earlier cases. She's forced to revisit a number of her earlier cases from the actual books. So I'm having to go back. Who remembers what you wrote, 18 years ago, 20 years ago? So I'm having to go back and reread a lot of my own work over the years. So that'll become incorporated into the new book.
That's great. It's kind of like, it's almost like homework, because if you don't do it, then you're going to get lots of emails. People are going to say,
Yes.
well, in book 2, you said this, and in book 22,
Yes.
you said that. And,
Yeah.
come on.
His eyes were blue. They weren't green. You said so on page whatever. And yeah, it's true. And I think especially thriller readers are very perceptive. And they're reading to pick up on clues, obviously, to solve the crime before the author tells them the answer to it. And so they're really good at noticing if you get something wrong.
No, they really are. So we've all been doing this virtual thing now for like a year and a half. Are you itching to get back on the road again? You want to, when do you think you might be doing in-person events? Because I'm sort of struggling with that right now. And, things are looking good, but all of a sudden this Delta variant, and then who the heck knows what's going to be in the fall and all that.
Well, first of all, if everyone would just go out and get their vaccinations, we wouldn't have to be saying what's going to happen. We all have this love-hate relationship with book tour, right? You want your author, you want your publisher to support you and support your books and send you on book tour. And yet getting out there and schlepping through airports and checking in and out of hotels, gets really old. But what's fun is when you're there at the event and you actually get to face meet your readers and get feedback from your readers. So
yeah, I'm exactly that way. I love the events. I hate getting there.
Yeah.
It's just a schlep sometimes, and it's not a lot of fun, and you miss a flight or miss something, and then all of a sudden you're backed up and people are disappointed, and a lot of pressure. I have to say that the pandemic, the only silver lining for me was that I stayed home and I just wrote. So I'm far ahead of schedule, more than I've ever been in my life, which is nice. But I think I would have traded that for not having a pandemic. And
yeah.
I'm like, if the people today, the anti-vaxxers today, were around in 1918, we'd all be dead. There wouldn't be anybody left in this country because, one, we didn't have the medication back then to do it, and the vaccine distribution and all that. And it's just, I don't know where we lost faith in science and medical technology. I just don't know. But that's, maybe somebody wants to write a story about it. So would you think about I've been asked this a lot, would you think about writing about COVID in any of your books?
Well, I didn't write about it. As this one was finishing up, I went back and I inserted reference to it to make it clear that the bone code is taking place after COVID had been and gone. So, but it's not that I wrote about a similar contagion in this book, similar and dissimilar, but about, a hot spot of a flesh-eating disease.
Yeah.
So, but I think, you know, every author is going to face that. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to ignore it? Okay, that's fair. Or do we write about it?
Yeah, I mean, I finished a book where the only reference I made to it was that I used, you know, the term post-pandemic, and that's it. I didn't use the word mask or social distancing, but I did say post-pandemic, and well, maybe that'll be enough. Okay, now I'm supposed to give you these rapid fire rounds if you're ready. I hate these myself, but you know,
I know this. Okay.
these are my marching orders. We'll have some fun with them.
Okay.
So, first, what is your favorite book in the series, if you have one?
Oh, I like Bones to, of course, it's the new one, the Bone Code. You have to go out and buy that one and read it. But I do like Bones to Ashes. There's something about that. And the setting in Nova Scotia. I don't know. I like the last line of that book a lot. So.
Now, aside from the book, is there a favorite case? And this may be the same as the first question. Is there a favorite case that Tempe worked on that really sort of captured your imagination and you thought about?
I've got to go with the very first book, Deja Dead, that kicked the whole thing off. It's based on a serial murder case I worked on in Montreal. And when I started the book, the case was fully litigated. The guy had been convicted of multiple murders and is still in jail. One of the element I testified about at his trial, the woman was murdered and dismembered. And the way the dismemberment was done was very unusual. And I won't go into a lot of detail, although you learn about it in Deja Dead. But the way he went about cutting up her body was very telltale about his personal history. So that's always been near and dear to my heart because it was the basis for Deja Dead, and that kicked the whole thing off.
Yeah, which is a great title. I remember the book very well when it first came out. And, it was a terrific story, introduced a fabulous new character, and it was a great title. You know, I love it.
You know, so I'm sure you do this, maybe you don't, but sometimes the title is there right away. Sometimes I'm finishing the book almost and my editor is saying, come on, we got to have a title. We got to have a title. Sometimes it comes up along the way as I'm writing the book. But Deja Dead was right there with me from the beginning. I liked that it's a play on French and English. It's kind of a clue to the setting of the book. And yet it was deja vu. Every English speaker knows that phrase. So that just worked for me as soon as I thought of it.
I found that titles are either incredibly easy or the climbing a mountain with a boulder on your back. You know, it's a middle ground to that. It's either like snaps into your head and wow, this is perfect, or you go through 5,000 iterations, everybody has an opinion and nobody likes whatever anybody else likes. And yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta put a title on it. So, okay, so favorite villain.
Oh gosh, I have only one book in which the villain gets away at the end. And I did that intentionally. I don't know if I should tell you who it is. I did that intentionally. That was book 7. And then in book 17, this villain reappears. So I eventually get to reel her in, but in a very unusual way. And the reason is the way she's found murdered, this villain, and the way she's murdered, the way her body's discovered is fiendishly clever. So I'm going to go with that answer.
It's always nice to slide an ace in your sleeve to hold it back for later. So there
you go.
All right, switching over to the TV series, who was your favorite guest star on the Bones series?
Oh, we had Betty White. You gotta go with Betty White. What is she, 97 years old or something like that? And she is still absolutely sharp as a tack and has a wonderful sense of humor. She played our oldest intern.
And I'm sure she was fantastic.
Yeah, she's Betty White.
Now, speaking about titles, did Tempe bounce off? Was that the first name you thought of for this character, or did you go through various iterations of it?
Tempe's name, I had a student, I did a program called Semester at Sea, and it's a university program. Right now I think it's out of Virginia. It may have moved. It was at Pitt and then Virginia. And you spend a whole semester on a ship and it goes around the world. So I did that back in the late 80s with my 3 of my kids. It was really a life-changing experience. Anyway, there was a student on board named Tempe, and I just liked that name. But when I was creating the character, she's a Irish Catholic girl born in, Chicago in an Irish neighborhood. So I had to elongate it to a baptismal name. So it became Temperance. And then my daughters, the Katie character was kind of a conglomerate of my daughters. So I didn't want my son to be left out, and his name is Brendan. So that's where Brennan came from. So that's Temperance Brennan. I never would have named her Temperance if I'd thought of the connection between her being a non-drinker.
Right.
It was like, oh, when a journalist pointed that out in an interview, I wouldn't have used that name.
Other things, it's a terrific name, very unique. So it's memorable. So that's what you want in a character.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
last question, do you have a favorite story you've gotten from a fan of your book?
Favorite story from a fan?
Yeah.
I have a lot of favorite stories I've gotten from colleagues. You mean a story that I would have used in a book, or just a story?
Maybe just, meeting a fan somewhere that left an impression on you.
I'll never forget the woman who came to my signing and insisted I sign her baby. So we had to put clothing up under its little onesie, and then I signed across the top of its onesie.
That, I have to say,
Remember that one? Yeah.
that's my legal background came in handy when people ask me to sign certain things. And I was like, I really can't do that because that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I'm not signing your baby. No, I'll sign a release and then sign your baby. Baby was good with it. Baby never woke up. So.
Well, that's the best you can hope for from babies. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's it from me. But it's so great to see you. It's been a long time. Every time we get together, they're not often enough. We always have terrific times, like we never were apart. And just congratulations on fabulous success. I mean,
Thank you so much. Hopefully Thriller Fest upcoming. What is that? 2022. I think I just saw the August. Yeah.
And David, before we let you go, we'd love for the viewers to learn a bit more about A Gambling Man. Do you mind sharing the premise?
So Gambling Man is the second installment of the Aloysius Archer series. Kathy might like this. I started writing the first book in the series, One Good Deed, when I was in a snowstorm on book tour in Toronto, Canada. And I'm staring outside of my hotel room after a full day of work, just a blinding snowstorm. And I thought, I'm going to write a book set in 1949, a crime noir book about this guy named Aloysius Archer, gumshoe detective, and see where he goes. And the second book, he's heading to California. He's going to study under the tutelage of a veteran PI named Willie Dash. And he gets into lots of trouble, meets a lady along the way, an actress, Liberty Callahan. And I just finished the third book in the Archer series. Now he's in Hollywood. It's 1953. He's got a lot of years under his belt, and we'll see where he goes. But I got to tell you, it's just writing crime noir. I love crime noir. I grew up reading Dashiell Hammond and Raymond Chandler and Ross McDonald and James Ellroy, and that atmosphere is just, really, it's great for my sensibilities, and I love writing about it. So yeah, Archer's going to keep on coming back until I run out of things for him to do and trouble to get into.
That's great news. I thought One Good Deed was one of the favorite books. It's phenomenal.
Thank you.
So anyway, thank you very much again, David, for joining us and helping Kathy celebrate her USA bestseller and New York Times bestseller, The Bone Code. And I hope you have a lovely night.
Yeah, same to you, Maya. Kathy, it was great to see you again. Take care.
Bye. Thanks again.
So Kathy, as we're just wrapping up, I'd love to ask you a couple questions. One of which is, over the 20 books and a very impressive career with so many accolades and experiences, I wonder if there's a moment that stands out to you as the proudest moment of your career.
Oh my goodness. Winning the Best First Novel Award, the Ellis Award, which was in Vancouver, I think it was given to me. That because it was all so new, and that one still stands out in my mind.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine, because like you said, you came in and you weren't certain about the industry, and then all of a sudden you have this amazing success. It does seem like you were born to do it, given the stories we hear about so many people having rejection after rejection and trying to have to work on their writing to get ahead. So
yeah. Well, thank you. Great questions.
Thank you. And then what about what's next for you? Just before we wrap up, just what are your plans? I know we're only getting 22 books until we, hopefully talk into more. But what's in your plans?
Well, I wrote a short story I've largely written a short story for an anthology for the International Thriller Writers, which Harlan is editing. It's called, I think it's coming out in the late fall, early winter. It's called Birds of Prey. So I've created a new character for that, and the character's name is Owl. Each writer is supposed to write a short story involving a bird of prey. So mine's called Owl. So I don't know. I had a lot of fun creating this character, so maybe I'll carry on with it.
Hope so. So, wrapping up, we want to say the warmest congratulations to you on your incredible career. We'd like to thank, Jeff Ayers for being a phenomenal producer tonight, and the whole team at Simon & Schuster, and our partners that are broadcasting this episode. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for allowing us to help celebrate this wonderful accolade. And I'm really hoping that we can book something for, the 25th.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Thanks again, Kathy. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.